Breaking news. The Georgia Supreme Court unanimously rejects the RNC's request to reinstate the MAGA election denier rules that could have delayed certification. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Mark Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started. Mark, major decision from the Georgia Supreme Court. Break down for us what they just ruled and what the impacts are.
All right. So the Georgia Supreme Court just denied a Republican Party motion to expedite review of an appeal of a case they lost to the trial court. That case that they lost was brought by a group that struck down 7 rules that this MAGA-dominated state election board enacted. And these rules ranged from things that would have allowed the delay or mischief with certification to a hand counting rule, to rules that would have expanded the area around poll watching, to requiring videotaping and video surveillance of drop boxes. This is a major defeat for Donald Trump's effort to subvert the election results in the state of Georgia.
Mark, there were 2 rules that caused a lot of concern, not just in Georgia, but nationwide. One of them was the quote unquote reasonable inquiry rule that said that local election officials could conduct a reasonable inquiry into the completeness and accuracy of the election before they certified results. And as you mentioned, the hand count rule that said that poll workers across Georgia needed to hand count every ballot cast on election day. Now, they weren't hand counting for race results. They just needed to count the total number of ballots cast on election day. But taken together, those 2 rules had the possibility of delaying results and delaying certification.
Yeah. And also, look, even if it didn't delay anything, like, why are you burdening these election officials? Why are you making people who have just worked the entire day and are going to be working well into the evening to ensure that Georgia is able to report its election results? Why are you going to force every one of them at every precinct in the state to hand count a bunch of pieces of paper? Like, what's about that? What's that about, right? Other than creating and sowing the idea of chaos. Why would you say that these county election officials, these canvassing boards, whose job is ministerial? What do I mean by that? Its job is to take the numbers, put them on the state-approved form, sign them, and send them on. Why would you create rules to create the illusion that somehow they are to do their own investigation and create, again, an atmosphere, an aura of somehow something may be amiss? Right? The only reason why the Republicans wanted these rules, the only reason why Donald Trump called these people out by name is because they want to spread lies. They want to sow misinformation. Look, Paige, what they did with the hurricane. Look at how much damage they did by lying about FEMA and the relief efforts. You know, these are shameless people who will weaponize every aspect of our democracy, every aspect of everything that holds us together as a people. They will weaponize to tear us apart. And so that's why it's important that those were struck down. And it's the reason why it is great to see that the state Supreme Court is not giving any quarter to these efforts.
And Mark, we have talked about the state election board before and what they've done, but you keep saying that this is, Trump's state election board. These are MAGA Republicans on the board. Remind all of us, what does this board do and who sits on it?
Yeah, so remember, this is a 5-member board, 4 of whom are chosen by Republicans, 1 of whom is chosen by a Democrat. And 3 of those 5 members were called out by name by Donald Trump during a political rally in Georgia, where he called them pit bulls and that they would be fighting in ways that he thought would benefit his election. Let's take a look.
You've heard, but the Georgia State Election Board is in a very positive way. This is a very positive thing, Marjorie. They're on fire. They're doing a great job. 3 members, Janice Johnson, Rick Jeffries, and Janelle King. 3 people are all pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. They're fighting. Are they here? Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Thank you. What a job. Thank you.
All right. Now, Paige, let's be honest. There is no chance that Donald Trump could name a single member of a board in any state on any topic, no less the 3 members of the Georgia State Elections Board. In fact, I suspect Donald Trump wouldn't even know that there was such a thing as a Georgia State Election Board. This was a handcrafted effort by election deniers to take this board captive, to feed to Donald Trump that news. He couldn't help himself but call them out from the podium. They did his bidding in enacting these series of rules that threatened the post-election and threatened free and fair elections, but they lost. They got sued in several lawsuits. One of those lawsuits, a big one, challenged 7 of their rules. All 7 were struck down. The Republican Party thought they'd run to the state Supreme Court and get relief there. But guess what, Paige? The state Supreme Court of Georgia has held, they stood up to this tactic. They denied expedited relief. And that means that at least for 2024, these rules are not going to be in effect.
Now, the Georgia State Election Board is supposed to make rules. It is a rulemaking body, but those rules are meant to ensure uniformity across the state when it comes to running elections. Last week, Fulton County Judge Thomas Cox ruled that the Georgia State Election Board exceeded its constitutional authority when it created these 7 rules. And as he points out, they would have caused a lot of chaos because these rules were passed in August and September, and poll workers across the state had not been given training on how to implement them.
Right. And the Republican National Committee and Georgia Republican Party intervened in this case to uphold those rules. Why? Because, as you said, they would have caused chaos. Why? Because, as you said, they would have empowered election deniers. And that is why the RNC got into this case, because they want chaos. They want election denialism. And these rules, these 7 rules, like I said, these spanned from rules that would have given the ability of county canvassing boards to question the election results. It would have required all kinds of new rigmarole around drop boxes. It would have expanded the areas where poll watchers are able to be positioned. And of course, the hand count rule, a rule that would have required election officials to hand count ballots on election night, Paige, right? All of those and a couple of others were struck down by this district court judge, by this trial judge. And like I said, the Republicans thought they would be able to jump over the intermediate court, right? Because it's a court of appeals in Georgia, straight to the state Supreme Court, thinking they'd have it in there. But guess what, Paige? They were wrong. They underestimated the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court has denied this relief. Now, this case will still go forward on an orderly, more delayed time frame, but not one likely to threaten 2024.
Now, Georgia has a pretty conservative state Supreme Court, but they ruled unanimously to deny the RNC's request. Mark, what was their reasoning?
So we don't know a lot about their reasoning, but let me bring you back in time a couple of years to 2022, when there was a runoff election for United States Senate, and Republicans led by Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger tried to cancel a day of early voting, a critical day of early voting on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. My team in that instance brought a lawsuit on behalf of Senator Warnock's campaign and the Democratic Party, and we won. And in that instance, they thought that the Republicans thought they'd get the state Supreme Court to step in. And in that instance, the state Supreme Court also refused to step in. So this, Georgia Supreme Court is a conservative court. There is no question about it. This is a rock rib conservative court, but it has proven over and over again that it is not going to get dragged into these efforts to disenfranchise voters at the last second. So whatever may become of this case down the road, we know that the state Supreme Court is not playing the game that the Republican Party banked on them being willing to play.
And that whole situation was about the Georgia Senate runoff race in 2022, which of course Senator Raphael Warnock won.
Yeah, and look, and there's going to be another big Senate race in 2026 there. So this stuff is all important, not just for 2024 and in the future. And if you want to read more about that case from 2022 that I mentioned, we'll have a link in the show notes. But also make sure you're subscribed to Democracy Docket to get their free daily and weekly newsletters. A link is below as well. And you will be kept up to date on all of these breaking news cases that we see coming forward. Because, Paige, it is not just that they've lost this case in Georgia. They lost other cases in Georgia. In the last few days, they lost cases in, the Republicans lost cases in Michigan. The Republicans lost cases in North Carolina. You know, one of the things that we can't lose sight of is that they make a lot of noise when they do these outrageous things, right? The State Board of Elections made a lot of noise when it passed these rules. Donald Trump made a lot of noise from the stage when, you know, encouraging him to pass these rules. The RNC makes a lot of noise about all of the lawsuits they file. But, you know, Paige, as we head towards Election Day, let's not forget that for all the noise they make, they lose a lot. And it's up to each and every one of us to make some noise also when they lose, so that they don't get a free ride into misleading their supporters that somehow they are fighting the good fight, and that when the election is over, they get to claim it was rigged.
These rules are blocked for the 2024 election, but Mark, is this the end of the road for the Georgia State Election Board and their controversial rules?
I mean, first of all, look, nothing's ever the end of the road when it comes to election deniers. You know, election deniers will always find a way to make not the end of the road. I mean, may I remind everyone that Kari Lake is still contesting the outcome of her gubernatorial election in 2022. So, you know, I never say that election deniers are done. And the Supreme Court here did not rule on the merits. In other words, they did not rule that the Republicans are wrong, although they are wrong. What they said is that they're not going to expedite their appeal, which has the practical effect for 2024 of ending this matter. But this fight will continue, you know, and if not this fight, it'll be another one, because election deniers in Georgia and around the country, they need to fight these fights in order to create a permission structure for after the election. And that's what they're doing.
Mark, and we know that these rules serve no one, because state and local election officials in Georgia, Republicans included, the Republican Secretary of State and the Republican Attorney General, called out the state election board when they first passed these rules and said that the rules were unnecessary, they were acting illegally, and pleaded with the board to stop changing the rules weeks before the election.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, look, these rules were opposed by the Republican Secretary of State and the very conservative Attorney General of Georgia. I mean, whatever people may think of Brad Ratzenberger, and you know, I happen to think he's a pretty conservative guy, pretty partisan Republican. But be that as it may, whatever people may think about him, nobody thinks the Attorney General of Georgia, Carr, is anything other than a rock-ribbed, true believing MAGA Republican. And he said that these rules were probably illegal. And that's because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, as the Attorney General of the state, he still has to make sure they have functioning elections. And Brad Ratzenberger has to make sure they have functioning elections. And they have to worry that the business community that Georgia relies a lot on doesn't think that it is a state that can't run basic democracy. So it was good to see them come out. Now, would I have liked to see them lead the charge in these lawsuits? Absolutely. Should they have? 100%. But look, today's a day for victory. Today is a day to celebrate democracy. And so I want to make sure everyone is subscribed to Democracy Doc. It's free daily and weekly newsletters. The link is in the show notes below. And they will give you the ways to celebrate democracy, not just in Georgia, but around the country, because vote suppressors and election deniers and Republicans are fighting against democracy in court everywhere, in more than 190 cases in 39 states. And Democracy Docket is the go-to source for all of that information. So make sure you're subscribed.
Greg, you point out that this isn't the only lawsuit that the RNC has lost recently. They lost overseas voter lawsuits in Michigan and North Carolina. They lost voter purge lawsuits in Nevada and Michigan. What does this say about the state of the Republican Party that we are 2 weeks out from Election Day and they're still fighting tooth and nail to change the rules of the game?
Yeah, look, I mean, the only thing Donald Trump has left to do in his bag of tricks, the only thing that he has to appeal to voters is to lie to them and to scare them. He lies to them about almost everything. I mean, he lies about big things, he lies about little things. But one of the big things he lies about is about democracy. He lies about January 6th. He lies about the 2020 election. He lies about the 2024 election. And he scares people. He wants people to be afraid. But here's what my message is to you. If you are not sure if you're registered to vote, go check your voter registration. Even if you think you're registered to vote, check your voter registration. It only takes a second. Go to your county or state website, election office website, and check. make a plan to vote. If you're in a state where there's early voting, go vote now. Don't wait. No benefit in waiting to the last minute. You can vote now. If you have your absentee ballot and it's sitting on your kitchen table and you haven't cast it yet, go fill it out, go return it. Put it in a Dropbox if you stay with a Dropbox, put it in a mailbox if you prefer to do that, or drop it off if it's in a state where you can put it in person. If you want to vote on election day, that's fine, but make a plan, know when you're going to go, what time, where you're going to show up, because you need to make sure you have a plan to vote. Because here's the thing, Donald Trump and the Republicans, they want you to lose faith in democracy. They want you to think it's too hard, it's too complicated, it's all a mess, it's all chaotic. That's what they want you to think. But it's not. They're trying to create chaos. But as the court in Georgia pointed out today, or as the court in Georgia today by its ruling signals, courts are not going to allow with this nonsense. They're losing these cases around the country, and losing this in the state Supreme Court of Georgia sends a powerful message to everyone in every corner of this country that even conservative courts are not going to stand by Donald Trump while he tries to attack democracy. So thank you, everyone, for watching this episode. Please make sure you're subscribed to our free daily and weekly newsletters. The link is in the show notes below. And make sure you vote. Thanks.